The answers you need
from the people in the know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Pierre Poilievre continues to draw a crowd, and Mark Carney continues to play prime minister. With the end of the third week of the election campaign drawing near, the polls suggest one of these things is paying off more than the other. The Conservative campaign rolled into Waterloo Region yesterday for another one of Pierre Poilievre's Canada First rallies. It was held in the community of Woolwich. That is in a riding Kitchener-Conestoga that was held by the Liberals before the election was called. The Conservative Party claims it was another big crowd, although there is a news report today suggesting both the Conservatives and the Liberals are exaggerating about the crowd sizes at their rallies. It was the same speech that Poilievre gives at all of these rallies, kind of a collection of his greatest hits.
With all the rising costs and crime and an economy falling under America's thumb, these Liberals think they deserve a fourth term in power. What do you think? That's the choice. Either we're going to have a fourth term of Liberals, or we will vote for a change to elect a new Conservative government to axe taxes, build homes, unleash our economy, and put Canada first.
Some political veterans question the value of these rallies. They say organizing the rally takes away from some of the other needs of the campaign: door knocking, pounding in election signs, calling potential voters, or raising money. They also claim Poilievre has too many messages at these rallies, and he's not focused enough on Donald Trump. And they say it explains why the Conservatives are trailing the Liberals in the polls. But if Poilievre is concerned, he didn't sound like it this week after a big rally in Edmonton.
I want to ask about...
How did you like our rally last night?
Well, I wanted to ask about your rallies.
Thank you.
And whether size matters. I actually want to know about your rallies and what your strategy is and who you're talking to, because you bring up things like woke mob, Century Initiative, bulldozing the CBC, I'm exaggerating, but getting rid of CBC HQ. At what point are you just talking in an echo chamber to people who already feel that way, or do you feel like these are broadening the tent of support to Liberal or undecided voters to get them on board with your campaign?
I think it's pretty broad. I think how many people do you think we had last night?
Thousands.
Well, that's pretty obvious. I think you can be more precise than that.
I don't. I mean, the party said 10,000 registered. There's reports of 15. I really can't say.
One last question. When was the last time we had a rally that big in Canada?
I don't know. I've never been to a political rally that big, I don't think.
You know a lot about politics.
Well,
You're a very well-informed person. I know that if there were a bigger rally than that, you would know about it.
So far, these rallies have not translated into success in the polls for the Conservatives. Every one of the last 12 polls all show the same thing. The Liberals are in the lead. The Liberals have their own rallies, of course. They had a rally in Hamilton last night, and for the Liberal leader, Mark Carney, it's been difficult at times for him to deliver his remarks because he keeps getting interrupted by hecklers. It happened at a recent rally in Calgary and last night again in Hamilton.
Then we began our campaign on day one. On day one. On day one. Thank you. On day one. On day one. You focus on, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. On day one, we announced a middle-class tax cut.
Mark Carney won't have to deal with any hecklers today. He's back in Ottawa acting in his role as Prime Minister, again, convening a special cabinet meeting to talk about the latest moves from U.S. President Donald Trump on tariffs. That meeting started a couple of hours ago. He should make some remarks shortly. Someone who doesn't believe the polls is Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the New Democrats, and he better hope the polls are wrong, because all the polls show support for the NDP has collapsed to levels not seen since the early 1990s.
In terms of the polls, we have a very recent example where many polls said that in Ontario, New Democrats would lose party status, and they formed official opposition. So of course I've got my doubts about the way that covers our support, that our support is not accurately being represented. But either way, what we're focused on in this election is the choice that people have. The choice is this. You've got someone that's going to fight to defend your healthcare, and you've got Mark Carney who's proposing to cut your healthcare. You've got someone that wants to invest in and strengthen our healthcare so it's there for you when you need it, and someone that wants to make it weaker. If you want to defend our public universal healthcare, vote for a New Democrat. We're going to stand up to the cuts that Mark Carney is proposing, and we will never support a budget that cuts the things that you need.
Someone else who should be worried about the polls is Yves-François Blanchet, the leader of the Bloc Québécois. For months, the Bloc enjoyed a comfortable lead over the Liberals in Quebec, but much like the Conservatives, support for the Bloc has faded since Justin Trudeau resigned and since Donald Trump started talking about Canada. Now, the Liberals have a big lead in Quebec. But Blanchet is saying wait until next week and the leaders' debates. According to Blanchet, that's when Mark Carney will have to come out of hiding.
But, at some point, April 16 being, it's my birthday gift, April 16 being the latest that could come, I hope, you will have to be not so far from me, answer questions, and make things clear for Quebecers, because he seems to avoid that as much as he can. But I'm a quite hard person to avoid on the long run.
That will be next week's big news story about the election campaign, the leaders' debates. The French language debate is Wednesday. The English language debate is Thursday. Both debates start at 7 o'clock Eastern, and they're both being held in Montreal. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with our expert in communications, crisis communications, political communications, branding, and leadership. Barry McLoughlin is the president of TLC Transformational Leadership Consultants. Barry lectures at the Telfer School of Management at the University of Ottawa and at the MBA program at the Shannon School of Business at Cape Breton University. And you can read Barry on his Substack. Hi, Barry.
Hello, Rob. How are you?
Well, the weeks get more interesting as the month goes on. Barry, who won this week in the election campaign? Who won the week?
Well, I think actually this was one of those weeks that we're talking just a few hours early perhaps on this because, Mark Carney's already flown back to Ottawa and he's meeting with the premiers, so that can change things. But up till now, I think it was actually pretty even. I think both of them were able to spend the week putting out their key initiatives so that there's substantive policy from both of them. Every day they had their hamburger for it. But each of them would trip on it. Like they'd make a big announcement and then have this kind of kerfuffle with the media. And next thing you know, that's what's topping the news, how they handle that question. Globe and Mail, Mark Carney get into that one. That each of them have kind of the way they treat the media, especially the Poilievre campaign is pretty negative on the media. So that tends to take away from it. And it's one of those things.
I want to ask you specifically about that.
Okay,
but,
we'll save that.
But let me ask you this. Since you mentioned Mark Carney being back in Ottawa and, back into the prime minister mode, the news media will say, and the Liberal campaign will say, Mark Carney has paused his campaign. He's put his campaign on pause to come back and, deal with the Trump situation. He's paused his campaign. I'm sorry. I don't see it that way, Barry. I think portraying Mark Carney as prime minister is very much part of the campaign strategy for them. That's how I see it. That's my own opinion. How do you see it?
Oh, you're absolutely right, 100%. It is this kind of mechanism that we use in Canada. I don't know any other nation that uses it. I don't think the UK uses it. I don't think anybody uses it. We use this mechanism. Oh, he's put his campaign on hold. When he comes back to Ottawa, now he's prime minister. And then when he hops out to his Nepean riding, I guess he has to take that cloak off and put on the regular guy in the neighborhood cloak a few hours later. So it is kind of a funny thing. But nevertheless, you are right that this is a core part of the strategy. You have the Prime Minister of Canada here, and people react accordingly, and it has that certain element to it that basically adds a value, adds a dimension. He looks like
sure,
the guy in charge.
Yeah. Look at me. I am the prime minister. My opponents are not the prime minister.
Yeah.
I can speak as the prime minister from the prime minister's office. I can call a cabinet meeting. My opponents can't do that.
That's right.
It's like a dress rehearsal for the role.
Yeah. Well, just the other day he spoke to the president of the EU.
Yes.
Okay. Well, your typical candidate won't be doing that.
Yeah.
There's
some question about whether he should even be doing that.
Well, you wonder
under the caretaker convention, right? So, and what is the urgency of him flying back to Ottawa, putting the campaign on hold, and pressing pause, and all of this, having a cabinet meeting? This announcement from Donald Trump on tariffs didn't change anything for Canada.
Well, no, but you probably have three of the premiers here in Ottawa for the Conservative, I think we do, for this Conservative conference. And so they're right there anyway. He's got to get back to the weekend for the riding. So I'm not being cynical when I say this. When you're playing the role of PM, that flight is taken care of by the government of Canada, okay? When you're flying back as a candidate, it has to be on your expenses for the campaign. And you got to itemize it. So I'm not saying that it was done for that reason. Who knows? But he wants to keep it on the front burner whenever he possibly can. That's really important.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about maybe. I would like your take on this because, of course, it's Poilievre who has the reputation of sparring with the media, but Mark Carney has done that multiple times during the campaign. He did it yesterday when he was asked about a man who's running for the Liberals in Markham, which is one of a riding with a big Chinese Canadian population is Markham Unionville. It's like 70% of the population in that riding. They lost a candidate there. That candidate was seen as too pro-Beijing, and so was this candidate. And Mark Carney was asked about that, and I'd like your take on how he handled it. I don't know if we'll play all of this, but let's roll the tape here.
Is the party okay with the fact that Liberal candidate Peter Yun has been so close with the Chinese consulate and China-friendly groups, given the public inquiry into foreign interference, says that this is a tactic China uses to exert influence?
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but you can't believe everything you read in the Globe and Mail. So in your question, and I guess in the article in question, you said I had a meeting with whatever your term was, Beijing group. I've never heard of this group, okay? Never heard of this group. Certainly didn't have a set-up meeting with this group. Full stop. So check your sources before you write things like that, okay?
Okay, all right, yeah. What did you think of that?
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
I didn't care for it. It was completely unnecessary, and it took him off. It made it news. We always teach them, how you react will determine whether this is a boring old story going nowhere, or you used to call it above the fold front page. Thanks very much for that. You made it newsworthy. And yes, there is a photograph of him with these people, and he could have said that in a nice conversational tone of voice. I was introduced to some people, I don't recall that specific one, for a photo op, and that's all it was. But full stop, hitting the Globe and Mail. I mean, I'm not sure why he does that. There's no need for that. And he's had several of these go on during the campaign. He often uses the phrase full stop, final point. He does it in French, does it in English. That's his signal that I'm fed up and I'm not adding anything more with you. It was completely an unforced error. But he's got to learn. He can't keep doing that.
Okay. When we come back, we'll talk about Poilievre, his rallies. Poilievre boasting about the size of his rallies. How does that come off for people, do you think? We'll ask Barrett McLoughlin when we come back. I mean, lots of talk this week. It was a big news story, the size of the crowds at Pierre Poilievre's campaign rallies. And this was the morning after the rally in Edmonton, which was described as huge, crowd of 15,000. Although there's a CBC News report today that questions whether that number is accurate or not. The introduction by Stephen Harper, all of it. Very clearly, Pierre Poilievre was basking in the glow when he was asked about it by Laura Stone of the Globe and Mail. Let's listen to this here.
I want to ask about...
How did you like our rally last night?
Well, I wanted to ask about your rallies.
Thank you.
And whether size matters. I actually want to know about your rallies and and what your strategy is and who you're talking to, because you bring up things like woke mob, Century Initiative, bulldozing the CBC, I'm exaggerating, but getting rid of CBC HQ. At what point are you just talking in an echo chamber to people who already feel that way, or do you feel like these are broadening the tent of support to Liberal or undecided voters to get them on board with your campaign?
I think it's pretty broad. I think how many people do you think we had last night?
Thousands.
Well, that's pretty obvious. I think you can be more precise than that.
I don't. I mean, the party
I think
said
you get
10,000.
the idea. And how many do you think we had? And you've been around politics a long time, Laura. You're very smart. And so the Liberals would say only Trump boasts about the size of the rallies, and this is Trumpy. What do you think?
Well, yeah, it is kind of Trumpy, and it was completely unnecessary. Another unforced error. It happened to be the Globe and Mail this time, and each of the candidates are taking their shots at the Globe and Mail. But, that was kind of like, what was the point of him, challenging her on these specific numbers? Like, it was an odd thing to say. I always say, look for the opportunity in the question. The opportunity there was, you're putting out all these, CBC, other things and that. Speak to the responses you're getting from people on the initiatives, the policies that you have laid out in this campaign. What a golden gift she gave you. Instead of getting into the numbers, usually that's something that Trump cares about. He wants everybody to know he got the biggest numbers ever. And, anything that's Trump-like, it's really important for Pierre Poilievre to drop those kinds of, little sound bites he kind of uses. And even the Canada First, America First thing, it's just way too shadowy closely to the kind of Trump approach. He doesn't need to do that.
Okay. Look, I want to talk to you next week about the debates as well. Get you back on before the debates on Wednesday. They start on Wednesday and Thursday. So, but I think, a quick answer here. If you're the Liberals, I think you want to try and lower the expectations for Carney as much as possible, especially for the French language debate. And if you're the Conservatives, you don't want to hype it too much. It may make these predictions. Oh, Poilievre's going to wipe the floor with Carney, because I think that could fail too. Quick comment.
Absolutely true. This isn't about winning, losing. It's about exceeding expectations or underperforming against expectations. So you need to lower the expectations for yourself, raise them for your opponent, and that's the framework you got to go into that debate with. And Justin Trudeau did not win the 2015 election, but he certainly exceeded expectations. And even the point the Conservative says, well, even if he gets on stage and doesn't bump into the furniture, he's going to win. So because there's no expectations for him. Well, it is about expectations, and it's very important to manage that properly.
Yeah, totally agree. Talk to you next week a little bit more about what goes into preparing for these kinds of things. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Rob.
Bye-bye. Barry McLoughlin, the president of TLC, Transformational Leadership Consultants.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Well, he's been minding Ottawa's business all week long. He does that even during election campaigns. Tom Korski is back with us. He's the managing editor at Blacklock's Reporter. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, Rob.
So, promises abound in this election campaign. There are promises from all the parties every day. I don't know if it's an election campaign that will be decided on promises. I think it's more an election about emotion, change, fear, stability. But Mark Carney did make a promise yesterday to accelerate the slow-moving federal gun buyback program, which you have been covering for years, the evolution and the problems with this gun buyback program. What do you know about how this buyback program has gone so far?
Slow. It's just glacial. It's been 5 years. What was the point? They said they were going to blacklist some 1,500 types, makes and models of what they called assault-style firearms. And they were going to buy them back. They didn't want to expropriate property. That's just an invitation to legal trouble. They were going to buy them back because New Zealand did this sort of thing several years ago, and it seemed like a good idea. Problem, the Minister of Public Safety of the day, who was a huge advocate of the gun buyback program, was subsequently fired. The new Public Safety Minister in the day, Minister LeBlanc, was from New Brunswick, who said, my rural constituents love hunting. They're not crazy about this buyback. So what happened? Defer. They postponed to the gates of hell. They've passed 2 deadlines now to end what they call an amnesty. That is, they would compel owners of these firearms to surrender them to police. That has now been extended into next year. And they still don't know the cost. And here's the payoff pitch, even if you have no opinion on guns. The cost estimate in New Zealand, it went double the original budget. And in this country, they have no idea. A figure of $750 million for this is not unreasonable, says the budget office.
$750 million?
$756 million, the budget office has estimated. It's huge. It's absolutely mammoth.
Okay. How many guns have been purchased so far from firearms owners? Do we know?
I believe they would fit in the trunk of a squad car at the RCMP detachment. And there's also been internal research that has shown, Rob, they don't know how many weapons would be under the buyback anyway. Could it be 150,000? Could it be 200,000? Could it be more? They don't know. Is it an open-ended budget on this? Will it just go on and on until they get tired? They don't know. And under the buyback scheme, they have continually expanded the number of firearms. You know what they find in internal research over and over? Whether they survey firearms owners or people who have never owned a gun in their life, they say, why don't you go after gun crimes? Why don't you do that?
Sure. Yeah.
These are not firearms that are smuggled across the border from the United States. That's the problem.
Yeah, these are not the firearms that are the problem. Okay, so the Liberals have attempted several times now to pass regulations about the internet, an internet regulation bill. They say to go after things like hate speech, racism, misogyny, and Mark Carney yesterday again said they're going to move forward. They're going to try. I guess the third time will be the charm. I guess will be the line. What are they promising to do?
Well, he calls it online pollution. As you mentioned, the Prime Minister, and he's not the first in the cabinet, conflates issues like hate speech with mean tweets. Parliament thought of this many, many years ago, even before the internet. In 1970, they made hate speech a crime. That's actually in the criminal code. And if you run across hate speech, even on the internet, you just have to call police. You don't need new laws. But Cabinet has always conflated this with mean tweets and people who hurt their feelings on the internet when they're talking to Facebook friends or, for instance, writing a blog and discussing things about the government you don't like. The reason the 2 previous bills have failed is because they have inexplicably, it's really something to see, united left, right, and center across the political spectrum. Free speech advocates, academics, publishers, there have been the Internet Society of Canada, libertarians. Everyone has said this is such a bad idea. When the Prime Minister, by the way, Rob, when he talks about, internet posts that hurt your feelings and make people do bad things, he said, there was a former heritage minister just back in February, put it much more to the point. What did she say? This was Pascal Saint-Onge back in February 20. She told reporters, respect is lacking in public discourse. Misinformation circulates easier than facts. And then went on to say that something must be done. Says the government of Canada. Even provincial attorneys general have said this is a horrible idea.
Okay. We'll be right back with more with Tom Korski. Follow up on a story that we talked about several weeks ago about Tesla. Tesla was accused of gaming the system by collecting rebates for cars. Well, did they sell that many cars? Who knows? But they collected tens of billions of dollars in rebates from the EV rebate program. The government promised that it would crack down on Tesla. Tesla wouldn't be eligible, but how accurate is that? We'll ask Tom Korski when we come back. Rebates. About a month ago, the Toronto Star had a story. It was headlined, Tesla gamed the system. Everyone knows the federal government had a rebate for Canadians who bought EVs, rebates anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000. And then quite out of the blue, the federal government announced it was going to wind that program down. And the government announced in January that the money in the fund would soon dry up. So if you want to buy an EV and get a rebate, you better do it now. And on the final weekend, David and I talked about this at the time, how wild and crazy this was. The final weekend that these rebates were available, Tesla claimed that it sold 8,653 vehicles.
Wow.
In 72 hours, right? 116 vehicles an hour. So obviously it kind of smells fishy. $43 million in government rebates Tesla qualified for. So Chrystia Freeland, who is the Minister of Transport now, said, well, we're going to crack down on that. What has happened since?
Well, what has happened is the Department of Transport listed vehicles that were eligible for the 5,000 rebates. Why wouldn't they? It's for the benefit of consumers. And Teslas are still listed as eligible. We asked the Department of Transport, are they eligible or not? No comment. So their public notice speaks for itself. By the way, there are some Tesla models that are not eligible anymore as of the middle of January, the 10th of January. But the reason had nothing to do with Chrystia Freeland or the Liberal government or politics or anything. It's because the manufacturer raised the price over $55,000, which is the maximum under the criteria for the rebate program. The problem is all this happened 2 months before Trump's tariffs and Elon Musk with the chainsaw or Chrystia Freeland becoming the Minister of Transport. This is a hallmark of this. This has happened, we can count over half a dozen times with this cabinet. So when the Minister of Transport tells the Toronto Star, when I became Transport Minister, I asked the department to stop all payments, and no payments will be made, and I told it doesn't work that way. They saw Trump do this on television. We are a government of laws, and it is a parliament that decides who qualifies, not the Minister of Transport, to disqualify companies I don't like.
Interesting. Okay. Moving right along.
Oh,
This is a big story. New standards being adopted for heating and cooling appliances. This is news you can use, everyone, because it could cost you big bucks, these new heating and cooling standards for appliances. What's it going to mean? What are the new standards? What could they mean for consumers?
Huge costs. It's a big deal, Rob. I agree. These are essential appliances, by the way. These are not rice cookers. We're talking about gas furnaces, water heaters. I could go down the list. Heat pumps, light fixtures, shower heads. These are now going to have to meet California efficiency standards as adopted by the Department of Natural Resources. They are implementing these by mandate incrementally starting in October, and it's going to be rolled out over the next 3 years. The costs are staggering. Over $250 million a year for consumers, the department says in its legal notice. Consumers will pay. Well, what if I'm low income and I don't want to freeze to death and I can't afford one of these new California standard gas furnaces? To which the department says, well, how do they put it? It is possible, they said, low-income households could have more difficulty, end of quote, tough luck, Charlie. This is one of those climate programs that will not improve your standard of living. The costs are extraordinary, Rob.
Yeah. Very little coverage of that. I'm very surprised since everyone has at least one of these appliances in their house. And, if it has to be replaced, these new California style regulations will mean higher prices for consumers at a time when tariffs and such uncertainty about the economy.
All these the vast majority are made outside of Canada.
Yes. Love this story. Department of Employment tripled spending on consultants. Tripled spending on consultants in a single year to $311 million. How possibly could this happen, and what's the justification?
Well, they said, literally, they said in an internal report, there was no employees available to do the job, Rob. There was no one available to do the job. So, of course, they had to hire consultants.
And how many people work for the Department of the Employment? Department of Employment has how many employees?
34,000.
34,000.
Oh, by the way, the job was to mail out employment insurance checks, which the department is already doing, but they wanted to, their word, modernize it. They wanted to do it better. And there was no one among the 34,000 in the Department of Employment who could think of a better way to mail out an employment insurance check. So naturally, they had to hire consultants of $350 million a year. Unbelievable.
34,000. Accenture. I mean, people know all of these names. Accenture, Deloitte, Ernst & Young. Oh, GC Strategies on the list.
Oh, yes.
Oh, of course they are. Yeah, from the Green Slush Fund. PricewaterhouseCoopers, McKinsey. Yeah, they really like McKinsey. KPMG, they're all in on that. Because 34,000 people at the Department of Employment can't do the job. All right, finally, keeping an eye on the high flyers. We do this from time to time with the help of Blacklocks. It's great to be Tom Clark. I'll tell you what, this is like the sweetest gig to be the consul in New York. You are basically paid to party on behalf of the taxpayers. And why not go to Beverly Hills? What was he doing in Beverly Hills?
That's a really good question. For 4 nights at Marilyn Monroe's favorite hotel, the Avalon Hotel, it cost about $7,000 for this 4-day.
4 nights. Wow.
Oh, sure. And Tom, as you say, it was exhausting. The Manhattan social circuit was getting a little tiresome. So he flew out to business class to Beverly Hills for 4 nights. He said it was, this is my favorite part, he said it was to have a meeting with his Los Angeles counterpart,
right?
So they could discuss shared projects. I love, because you can't do that on the phone. You can't do that by email, Rob.
No Zoom calls for these guys. No Teams meetings. No Teams meetings. Hey, we have to have, I am the consul of New York. You are the consul in Los Angeles. Let's have a meeting. I'll fly out on business class tomorrow, and I'll stay for the tidy sum of $418 a night at the Avalon Hotel in Beverly Hills, which the Avalon calls the epitome of easy living. Yeah,
it was nice.
Life is good for Tom Clark. I'll tell you what. Yeah. Thank you, Tom Korski. Great to hear from you. Bye-bye.
My pleasure.
Minding Ottawa's business. Aren't you glad somebody is? That's Tom Korski from Blacklocks Reporter.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now you know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
Here with David Smith on a Friday, and if you're ever looking for a podcast of our show, now you know with Rob Snow. We have a great new mobile app that will help you hear our show when you want to. Listen live, listen to the podcast. It's called the Seeker app. That's Seekr. Hey, it has all kinds of exclusive audio that you won't hear anywhere else. News, music, and sports, and you can download Seeker for iOS or Android. Seeker, spelled Seekr. And now you know with Rob Snow is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm trying to keep David attuned to the job today.
What?
Because this is, after all, one of our favorite weekends in the world of sports. It is the Masters weekend. Round 2 is underway. What's the leaderboard look like? Round 2 of the Masters, David.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be a great tournament so far. How about Justin Rose, the 44-year-old Englishman, 9 under par, leading the way after a 7 under round yesterday. But nipping at his heels now, 4 under on the day, Rob, is Bryson DeChambeau at 7 under for the tournament. And then an American called M. McCarty. I have no idea who that is, to be perfectly honest with you. But Corey Connors, the good Canuck, 4 under par. He's even through 1 hole today. He's right there at T5. And then we've got my guy Scotty Scheffler rounding out the top 5. He's 4 under as well. The cut line right now is at +1.
+1.
And
okay,
there are
top
some,
15 ties.
Some
top
big names
ties.
right around the cut line right now. Rob, we've got Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, Max Homa, Brooks Koepka, Keegan Bradley, Dustin Johnson, Patrick Cantlay. All of these guys are currently +1 or worse.
Bernhard Longer. Like Bernhard Longer is 67 years old.
Yes, he is.
Right? Holy cow. And Freddie Couples, I don't know where Freddie Couples is, but he had a dynamite round yesterday too.
He holed out from the fairway on the 4th hole for eagle. That was a huge highlight. Freddie Couples, I love this story. This is like my favorite story of the tournament now. He's trying to break his own record to become the oldest guy to make the cut. So he set the record last year at age 64. He's now 65 years old, Freddie Couples. He is at -1, even on his day through 2. So if he can shoot even or better today, he's going to break that record again.
All right. So are you picking Scheffler to pull this thing off? Or
yeah,
what?
I think so. I've got to go with Scheffler. Okay. I have to.
All right. I'm going with this guy, Oberg. It's spelled A-B-E-R-G.
Ludwig Oberg.
I just like this guy. He reminds me, just his demeanor, the way he's a big guy. He's just kind of saunters casually around the golf course. He never seems to get ruffled.
Yeah.
Or rattled. He reminds me of Ernie Els.
Yeah.
Or another great golfer like Retief Goosen, if people remember Retief Goosen.
Oh, yeah, South Africa.
Majors as well. Yeah. He's just got that very calm demeanor, and he's got the complete game. Young guy, up-and-comer, right, Dave? Up-and-comer.
What I love about Oberg is his pace of play. If you're watching on the broadcast, they can barely get the camera on him before the ball is gone. He just steps up and hits it, and I love that.
Yeah, and he's right there. He's right there as well among the leaders. So should be a fun weekend for golf fans with the Masters underway in Augusta. Talkback is coming up for us. It's the Friday free-for-all Talkback. You can get a line right now if you want to at 1-833-668-2577. We're wide open. Open line, open topic on Talkback.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today it is the Friday free-for-all, our favorite day of the week around here. We don't come up with the topics on Fridays. We've been doing that all week long, most of them having to do with the election. But today it's your turn. What do you want to talk about? What's on your mind? You want to talk about something that's been in the news? You go for it. You want to talk about something you think should be in the news? You feel free to raise that here, whatever it happens to be. We have a phone line for you. We have ears to bend, and we're ready to go. David's screening the calls today. So just mention to David if you're a first-time caller, and he'll make your call a priority. 1-833-668-2577 is our call-in line. 1-833-668-2577. 2577. Some people have called already. That's good to see. Let's get things going with, how about Norm is called from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Hello there, Norm.
Hey, Rob. How you doing today?
Just, it's great, sir. It's Friday, after all.
Friday's always a good day.
It's a good day for me.
So, Rob, it's got to be the political show, doesn't it? I mean, here we are. I want to talk about, for somebody that's not an MP, really, it's Carney's doing a good job playing politics, I think. I mean,
okay.
He's pausing his campaigns, and I mean, is he going to pause the debate? Is he going to find somebody to pause the debate? I wonder. And the Liberals using their normal scare thing about Trump and stuff. I mean, the more you watch Trump, I don't think he's going to be as scary as what people think he is. I think he's a world problem, but he keeps switching things on a dime to create chaos, and he's changing this and he's changing that. I think that he uses scare tactics himself to try to force people to so he can get his own way. I think that he's getting
you think he's hyping the Trump stuff, sir?
Sure,
Mark Carney?
I think Trump's getting a lot of backlash from people around him, and I think that's why he's doing a lot of change and stuff.
Right.
Right. It's all scare tactics. A lot of it is. I think people are getting too worried about things they shouldn't be worried about. I mean, honestly.
Okay.
Now,
let me run this by you, because this is an idea I have. I disagree with many of my media colleagues, with all due respect to them, who say Mark Carney has paused his campaign and is, flying back to Ottawa, having a cabinet meeting, dealing with Trump, all of this stuff. This is my opinion. This is not a pause of the campaign. This is part of the campaign. This is part of the Carney campaign. Look at me. I'm the prime minister. I'm making decisions. I'm talking about Trump. I'm talking about tariffs. I'm doing the job. I'm doing the job right now. Polyev can't do the job. Jagmeet Singh, are you kidding me? Jagmeet Singh is going to do this job. I'm doing the job. This is part of the campaign to me. What do you think?
I think it is too. I mean, I think, like I said, for somebody that was never been elected, he's doing a pretty good job playing politics. I think. I mean, honestly, if he's worried about if he worries about the debate, is he going to find somebody to pause the debate and get out of that too? I mean, I'd be really curious to see what happens there. Really, to be honest with you, I mean, honestly, it's. Well, I'll tell you, Rob. I wrote a little story, a little short story here. Is what I think. I think it's called The Liberal Fairy Tale. It starts with the Trudeau regime collapsing because of poor management and bad policies. The worst being Stephen Guilbeault, who said he would not run for a party couldn't follow his outrageous climate policies. So MPs asked Mark Carney, a net zero environmentalist, longtime friend of Trudeau, and financial advisor for 5 years with questionable achievements, to run for PM. Then President Trump wreaks havoc on Canada, and Carney moves Brookfield assets to New York, lies about his involvement, and Glasgow Financial Alliance for net zero faces trouble with Washington for questionable legal practices and being a climate cartel. Then Trudeau steps down and Carney wins leadership. He asks Guilbeault to stay on as head MP for Quebec. Then he builds a cabinet with mostly the same MPs that implemented and created the bad policies that screwed Canada in the first place. Even asked Sean Fraser to rerun after kicking out the MP already running. Then Carney, who hates gas and oil pipelines and keeps Guilbeault on, somehow convinces people he's going to build a new energy corridor by not repelling the pipeline legislation, and then run pipes west, east through Quebec, and also through the frozen north with ice and snow and frost heave, pump it on tanks.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's just one thing after another. If people actually look at what's going on, it just boggles my mind, really.
All right. Well, Norm, we'll see how it all plays out. I mean, a little more than 2 weeks to go until it's all said and done. I really thank you for your call today. Thanks, Norm. Great to hear from you. From Dartmouth, let's go to just across the bridge in Halifax. Hello, Eric.
How you doing?
I'm good, Eric. How are you feeling today?
Feeling a lot better today. Still got a couple more days to go. My medication's getting down, so once that's over with, I should be up and running.
That's good.
You, Dave was telling me that you do follow hockey.
Oh, yes.
In some sort. And if the playoffs were to start tomorrow night, Toronto and Ottawa would meet in the first round, and I'm wondering, do you think Ottawa has a chance? Because Toronto has a tendency to get knocked out the first or second round. How do you think Ottawa would fare?
Well, I don't know. Toronto's a good team. I mean, there's a reason that they're first overall in that division. They've got a very potent offense. They beefed up the defense. I mean, they got. I'm telling you, though, Ottawa they've played really well the last few months. They had a great month of March, and I think it's going to be a real test. And what the big change for Ottawa this year is the goaltending. Like they've got a great. They got this guy from Boston, and he's just been lights out for them. And if you get a hot goalie, you know this. If you get a hot goaltender, you can ride that through the playoffs, right?
Yeah, we got a hot goaltender down here. His name is Steinman, and he
for the Mooseheads, and look what he did. Like you guys were last in the queue to make the playoffs, and you just knocked off the best team, right?
Yeah, anything could happen.
Anything can happen.
I'm surprised that you're not picking a good Canadian in Corey Connors. How come you're not picking him?
I just like Oberg better. I like his game. I like his game. Right. I like what he's got. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the Stanley Cup, it's going to be Washington and Winnipeg.
Yeah, well, hard to bet against that right now. Hard to bet against that. My old saying, I've said this to you before. Eric.
Myself a lot of rest, and I took your voice about chicken soup.
Okay. Well, look, Eric, I've told you this before. As long as it's not the Leafs, my friend, as long as it's not the Leafs, okay? In the end,
you and a lot of other Canadians feel the same way.
Okay. All right. Great to hear from you, Eric. Get well. Thank you. Bye-bye. Got to run. Let's go to Chad in Calgary today. Hi, Chad.
Hi. How's it going, Rob?
I'm fine, Chad. Great to hear from you. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to voice my opinion here. I'm watching the polls here pretty closely, too, and I'm noticing the one thing that's not being talked about, and the Conservatives, I think, could really sway a lot of votes, would be changing their stance on abortion.
To what?
No, I haven't heard anything about it.
What do you mean, to what?
They've always been against abortion. And I think it's been holding them back because really a woman's body, it's her right. She should be able to choose what she wants to
Pierre
do.
Poilievre was asked about that and said there's no interest. If he wins the election, he has absolutely no interest in reopening the abortion debate. That's what he said today.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would get.
And he also noted that that's been official Conservative Party policy for 21 years.
That's right. That's right. And it's held them back, in my opinion. I mean, I'm conservative all the way, but it's really surprising that they've held that stance. I think they need to change their ways.
What do you mean? And become what? Pro-life, you mean? And restrict abortion access? Is that what you mean? That should be the
pro-choice.
Well, that's the Conservative Party's position right now.
Are you sure about that? Because I'm
absolutely positive. Yeah, I can get David to dig up the audio of Mr. Poilievre saying that today at his event today. He was in St. Catharines today, and he was asked about this.
Perfect.
Yeah, if you can find that.
I know there's a lot
David.
of women in my life that I know they won't vote because they think he's against it.
Yeah, I know this keeps coming up, but it's not just concerns about the Conservative Party and do they have a hidden agenda. This goes back to the hidden agenda. The Liberals always use, the Conservatives, they have a hidden agenda, soldiers in the streets and all of this stuff. But there are concerns, because people see what's happened in the United States, right? With Roe v. Wade and the decision at the Supreme Court and the very severe restrictions that are happening in individual states when it comes to abortion access in the United States. Heartbeat laws and all of this kind of thing. But right. We'll get David to dig up that audio of Pierre Poilievre during his... David has it right now? David? All right. Yeah, let's listen to this together. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
I can guarantee you there will be no laws restricting abortion passed when I'm Prime Minister. For 20 years, the policy of the Conservative Party has been that there will be no restrictions brought in on a woman's right to choose. It's been in our policy since it was adopted by our party members in the year 2004. So this is a 21-year policy adopted by our members and upheld at all of our subsequent conventions. So there will be no laws or other restrictions imposed on a woman's right to decide to do with her body as she wishes. And that is something that I'm guaranteeing to you and to all Canadians.
Okay. So that was Pierre Poilievre in St. Catharines, Ontario today.
That's wonderful. That's the best thing I've heard in the last few weeks.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He was asked about it by a news reporter.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Thank you very much, Rob.
There you go. Yeah, you're welcome. Glad we could clear that up for you. A little quiet on the phone lines today. A little surprised. Always have something ready to go for conversation starters. I mean, one of the big topics this week is, have the Conservatives blown this? What happened to the 25-point lead? Did the Conservatives blow it? Did Pierre Poilievre blow the election? A lot of people with a lot of scar tissue in federal politics are being really tough on the management of the Conservative election campaign these days. And I mean, they're basically saying, just stick a fork in the Conservatives, that it's over. I heard one grizzled veteran of many political campaigns say that very thing yesterday. This election campaign is over, and the Conservatives blew it. You think that's the case? How's that for a conversation starter? So we're wide open on topics today. You take the lead. Let's go to Keith in Halifax. Hi, Keith.
Hey, Rob. How you doing today?
I'm great, Keith. Thank you. How are you?
That's good to hear. I'm quite well.
That's good.
One thing I wanted to talk about was the increasing gun control restrictions on law-abiding owners.
Okay.
I know I'm probably preaching to the choir for most people hearing this, but there's a lot of misplaced restrictions here because statistically, I think it's like 95% of the gun crimes that happen are not those of law-abiding, license-holding gun owners, right? And this Liberal government is still gun chasing. They're gun grabbing every gun they can get. It's terrible. And I know that the restrictions seem to only be on these so-called assault-style firearms, but they keep growing the list, and eventually here we might not even be able to own firearms in this country.
Okay. Now, this was a major announcement yesterday from Mark Carney, was about gun control, as you know.
Absolutely, yes, I did hear that one.
Right. And he said that anybody convicted of a violent offense, such as intimate partner violence, would have their firearms license revoked. But as I understand it, that's already the case. That's already the case. That happens already. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've always had these rules in place. This new yellow or red flag thing that they're trying to bring in is kind of a hat on top of a hat. If you're a license holder, you are vetted every single day. Every 24 hours, the RCMP runs a background check against you to make sure you're not somebody who shouldn't own a firearm. These rules we already have in place are very stringent, and they absolutely do a fantastic job if you look at the statistics. And for the folks like myself who enjoy, I don't even personally hunt. My interest in firearms falls more in the sport shooting category. I like shooting paper, and I like guns in general. I know
Right.
there are issues in other parts of the world with gun control. They're not here. We do have gun violence, but if you look at where these guns are coming from, it's not coming out of the gun cabinets of people who willingly vet themselves every day to stay within the confines of the law.
Like this was what he put on social media yesterday after his event yesterday, announcing new gun control measures if the Liberals win the election. Someone who's been convicted of violent offenses, especially intimate partner violence, should not be allowed to own a gun. My government will automatically revoke their licenses. But many, many people are saying, hello, already the law. Already the law. Right? And you would agree, right? Already the law.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Keith. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go to Paul in Cambridge. Thanks for calling, Paul. Cambridge, Ontario. You're on the air.
I'm sorry for laughing so much. A previous caller that claimed to be a conservative, somehow I think maybe he's a liberal. Didn't we talk about the whole wedge issues just a couple of weeks back?
Yes, we did.
He said, next week they'll be raising the abortion issue.
Yes,
and
we
this
did.
is what it is.
And here it is. Yeah.
Yesterday they're going after the law-abiding gun owners. Now they're somebody else is raising the abortion issues. Why do they wait so long into the election campaign to try and pull out the wedge issues? Liberals thought they had it in the bag or something, so they left all the wedge issues behind temporarily. So, I'm just
you think maybe it's maybe the race is tightening, so it's better better be a good time to hit them with the wedge issues, the hot button.
They must be, because I see Carney yesterday announcing some tough on crime things and reducing the ability to get bail and whatnot for violent crimes. Where did I hear that before?
Where? Yeah.
They're getting so desperate. The Liberals are, just grabbing at all the conservative policies that they realize that are good policies. I'm a little tired today. I really enjoyed the rally here in
you went to the
Waterloo
rally.
Region.
Did you go to that rally? Yeah.
I was at that rally.
Okay, I want you to hang on. I want you to hang on the line. Then I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to throw that out today to our listeners in the Kitchener region if they went to that rally in Woolwich last night. I want to ask you some questions about that. Okay, when we come back, I'm Rob Snow. We'll keep Paul on the line. This is very interesting. He was at the Polyev rally last night. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Friday Free for All Talkback. Now, let me give you a little background. We'll get to Paul in just a second because we are on the air right now. 570 News Radio in Kitchener. We love being on the air in Kitchener. And I was going to ask today anyway, if anybody in the Kitchener area, the surrounding area, whatever, happened to go to the Pierre Poilievre rally last night in Woolwich. I always have a tough time saying that. But if you were there, I'd love to hear from you. Want to get a sense of what the experience was like, how big you think the crowd was. What'd you think of the event? What was the mood like at the event, just given what the polls are saying? Are people still hyped, optimistic, confident? Or are they kind of nervous and down in the dumps? Big line to get in? What'd you think of the speech? All these things. We love eyewitness accounts. If you were there last night, just fill us in and tell us what it was like. And for anyone else who happens to be listening anywhere else in the country, if you've been to a Poilievre rally, I'd like to hear from you as well and get a better understanding of what it was like. Because this whole thing about rallies took off as a news story this week for some reason. I've been talking about them for weeks. But only this week it started making the news cycle. David and I, this was one of the stories we were talking about this morning during our news meeting. CBC News, David, God bless them over there at CBC News.
Oh, our friends at the public broadcaster, they do such good work. Yes, of course.
Public broadcaster has a big story today. No fewer than 4 journalists. Can you imagine working this one story? 4 journalists with the byline. Can you imagine? Times must be tough over there.
It's an
good thing the government's going to give them more money.
Yeah.
4 journalists to do a story like this.
Yeah,
they say they created the CBC News Visual Investigations Team.
Ah, yes.
The Visual Investigations Team. Oh my God, I've never heard a more made-up term in my life. You know what? They must be swimming in cash if they can assemble a Visual Investigations Team. So anyway, they did a visual investigation, I guess, and found out that the Conservatives and the Liberals are both lying when it comes to the size of the crowds at their rallies, but the Conservatives are the bigger liars. The CBC Visual Investigations Team says it counted when, in fact, when you read the story, what they did is they called a university professor, showed him the picture, a crowd scientist, and asked him for his opinion. And he said 15,000 at that rally is impossible. And he estimates the crowd to be closer to 1,700. Like the party is saying 15,000. The cops were saying what? 12,000, 9 to 12,000.
Yeah.
The crowd scientist from the CBC says 1,700.
He's a scientist, so you got to believe him.
And apparently part of the Visual Investigations Team.
It's science, Rob. It's science.
Yeah, that's CBC News. On the case. Would the parties exaggerate the size of a crowd at a political rally for political purposes? I have no doubt about that. But by a factor of 10, I don't know. I don't know. But if you've been to one of these rallies, just let me know. Let's get back to Paul, because he was at one of the rallies. What'd you think of it, Paul?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the click.
Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, listen. I was going to go to the one in Brampton the day before. Then I found out through connections that the one was going on here in Kitchener. So I thought, well, that's much better, because the location is about 12 to 15 minutes from my home.
Okay.
But I decided I'm going to go out early. I have some health issues. I can't walk a long distance and whatnot.
Right.
Stand in big crowds. So I went out early to make sure that I was there at 3:30 for doors open at 6. Of course, there was already a lineup by then, but not too bad. I thought, oh, great. I ran into a bunch of people that I knew were already in line ahead of me. So they opened up the doors early, and we got in there, and the place starts. It was a little slow filling up, but and I start looking. Well, it's only 5 o'clock. The doors are supposed to be open at 6. The place is already, about half full at that point.
What kind of building was it?
It was a warehouse of some sort, right at the airport. It wasn't a hangar. There's a large facility with a lot of truck doors.
How many people would you say were there? How many people would you say that were there? They say 5,000. Does that sound about right to you? 5,000?
Yeah, I think that may be a little on the light side, and I'll tell you why.
Really?
Having gotten there early, I got an excellent parking spot, which was great. It was right close to the venue and everything else. I sat there in my truck for almost an hour trying to get down the street. Like the place is just one street, goes on to the main road. There's 3 businesses along there. There's a hangar, another business, I'm not sure what it is, and the one they had the event. It was an hour to get down the street to turn off onto the main street, and then I couldn't even turn left. I had to turn right because the traffic was so heavy, the cops wouldn't let me turn left.
Wow.
My son walked out, got in his truck, which was parked, out in the main street, It was about a kilometer away. He was home long before I even got out of the parking lot. The place was packed.
Okay.
I kept getting text messages, from friends. Hey, are you at the rally? Yeah, look over your left shoulder. Look over your right shoulder. I'm in behind you. People all over the place. Hard to find them, but it was packed.
Packed. Okay, interesting. Thanks, Paul. Good call. Yeah, we'll be back. We'll get Wade's call on next because he was at the rally in Edmonton. I'd like his thoughts on that when we come back.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Wade in Silver Lake up next on the Friday free-for-all Talkback. So you were at the Conservative Party rally, the Polyev rally in Edmonton. Is that right, Wade?
That is correct.
Yeah? What was that like?
It was great. Like your last caller, I got there at 2:30 as well and got a really good parking spot. And there was, maybe 75 people there by the time I got there. But an hour later, they were lined up all the way around the corner, and this warehouse was absolutely massive. The rally was in Nisku, which is a big industrial town just outside of Edmonton, and it was in the warehouse district. There was the Amazon Center was there, like the Amazon warehouse, and huge warehouses everywhere. When we had a speaker glitch, and so where I was standing, I couldn't hear much more, but the rally was close to over, so I thought, I'm going to get out when the getting's good. I jumped in my car. It took me 55 minutes to get to the main road. When I got to the main road, there was it was like a dead-end street from the warehouse side. There was 3 other intersections where the police had their cars lined up there, and every one of those intersections was plugged with cars trying to get onto the main road that I was on, and it was literally foot off the brake, foot on the brake, foot off the brake, foot on the brake. And it took me another 20 minutes to get to the road where I could turn right to finally find my way home. But I talked to people in the lineup there. There was people that had to walk 2.5 kilometers from where they could find a parking spot to get to
so
the
look,
rally.
There's a story today from the CBC that says there's no way there was 15,000 people there, or even 12,000, or even 9,000 people. They say the crowd was probably 1,700. What do you think?
Well, being that I'm not a crowd scientist,
right? You're not a crowd scientist, no.
So apparently
you're not part of the CBC News visual inspections
team.
People
were there, but I know there were many, and I talked to people that drove 3 and 4 hours to get there. There was somebody even there from Victoria, BC.
Yeah. See, I guess one of the things though that people are asking is, are all these people already in it for the Conservative? They're already going to vote Conservative. Is anybody going to these rallies who hasn't decided that they're going to vote for the Conservatives, but they want to check out the rally and maybe have an open mind and think about voting for the Conservatives?
Well, here's the contrast.
Yeah.
I was on my way home, and because I listened to 660 AM radio faithfully all the time, I heard that Carney was going to be in Calgary the next day. So I got home, got on the computer, found out where Carney was holding his event, and I drove from here to Calgary to Carney's event. At Polyev's event, there was no registration, no identification, no QR codes, no nothing. You walked in the door, they looked you up and down. If you wanted to buy a T-shirt, you bought a T-shirt, and then it was like, come on in. So when I got to Calgary, I was there very, very early again. I was the first one in the door. I mean, the people hadn't even started coming yet. I was the first one in the door, and Buddy's like, did you register? And I'm like, no. I didn't know I had to. And he said, well, I can't let you in if you didn't register. And I said, okay, well, how can I register? Well, registration's closed. And I said, oh. He said, you should have got an email to register. And I'm like, well, I have email, but I didn't get one.
Right.
And then I said, so are you, like, the only people that got emails were people that were already Liberal members? And he said, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, don't they want any new voters? I came here, I drove from Sylvan Lake here to hear what this man had to say because I haven't voted yet, and I wanted to make an informed decision. And I want to hear with my own ears what comes out of someone's mouth.
Fair enough. Okay.
The guy's like, I can't help you, I can't help you, I can't help you. I said, well, okay then. I guess you made my decision which way I'm going to vote. So I hung around there all day long outside, and the people were out there yelling at the crowd, get your QR codes out, get your identification out, get all this stuff ready. I hung around there till they finally closed the doors and said, we can't let any more in. So now there was like 100 and some people left outside that had QR codes and had identification that couldn't get into the building. So they said, go, there's speakers outside, go listen. So that's where they went, right by the bus where Mark Carney's bus was parked.
All right.
So there was 100 and some people waiting where Mark Carney should have walked out of the venue to get on the bus so they could say hello to him. And he snuck out another door and took off. Everybody's standing there waiting for Carney, and all of a sudden his bus drives away.
All right, we got to go. Thank you, Wade. Yep, thank you. Just, I do want to pass on a story that's just developing right now about the auto sector in Ontario. The GM Cami plant, that's in Ingersoll, Ontario. The union, Unifor, Local 88, is saying the plant is going to shut down, as many as 500 layoffs, and it's not going to open at least until October is what we have right now. That's all coming from the Unifor, the auto workers union in Canada. So that's a developing story. I'll have more details in our next newscast at the top of the hour. John is up next in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Hello,
yes,
John.
Hello.
Hi, John.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi, John. Go ahead.
Okay. I don't believe in polls myself. I think the polls just, I mean, they're talking to people that might be conservative. They're talking to people that might be liberal. And so I don't believe in that garbage. I believe when the election comes up, that's what, because people change their minds so many times. You know that yourself. I mean, I might be thinking conservative right now. Tomorrow I might be saying, no, I'm going to vote liberal. So I don't believe in polls. But I really hope that the conservatives do win this election, because the liberals had their chance for the last 10 years, and the same people are still in there yet. And the only reason some people are changing their mind is because Carney's in there. And who's Carney? Carney was appointed by Trudeau. Am I correct or wrong?
Well, he ran for the leadership of the party. That, Trudeau announced his resignation. They had a leadership race. He won the leadership race. There's nothing strange, odd, or unusual about that, sir. It's completely legitimate. What's going on?
One other thing too. I heard a couple of people there talking about that there was no abortion talked in this election. Well, it's just as well, because they'll never come to any conclusion on whether a woman has the right to kill her unborn child. They'll never come up with the right suggestion there. Now, when they say that a woman owns her own body, let me ask you one thing. It's against the law for a man or a woman to commit suicide, for me to go up on a bridge or go up in a building and jump out the window. Well, why don't they allow me to do that? It's my body. Well, a woman has a right to do it. Her own body is right, but does she have a right to kill an unborn child?
Well,
no,
again, okay, that's your opinion, and you and me are not going to settle this in 2 minutes on the radio. The difference is the fetus is not considered a living being. That's right in our criminal code, sir. That's the big difference. No, I don't want to get into that. We are not going to settle that. Two guys on the radio talking for 2 minutes about this. What would be the point? There's not anything one side can say to the other on that. On the divide, on that issue, I do agree with you. I'm Rob Snow, and if Poilievre wins, it doesn't look like Poilievre is going to win. he says it's not going to be brought up anyway. And the Liberals, for all their talk about it, have done nothing in 9 years to codify abortion access in the Charter and the Constitution in any way. You know where things stand? Things stand the way things stand when the Morgentaler decision came out and the 1969 law was ruled unconstitutional. There is no law in Canada. And no government wants to make a new one.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback. Again, it is the Friday free-for-all, so it's open line, open topic. We've been coming up with topics all week. Mostly we've been talking about the election. Almost exclusively, we've been talking about the election. But if you don't want to talk about the election, that's fine. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. That's how we roll on a Friday. Let's go to Dwayne, is called from Kitchener today. Hello, Dwayne. Hi, Dwayne. Can you hear me?
Hi, Rob. Yeah, this is Dwayne.
Yeah. Hi, Dwayne. You were at a rally, I understand.
Polyev was here.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
It was quite the event. Like some previous callers had mentioned that the place was just packed up. We were there, got maybe there about 6:30, and it was packed full, and it was rocking. I'm saying, just you want to use a simple terminology.
It was rocking.
I was
Okay.
quite impressed.
Right. What made it such a lively event?
Well, just the enthusiasm, and they had some music playing, which is probably pretty typical of those types of events. But then when Tara's wife talked earlier on at the beginning, she shared some very interesting information. I thought that was very well done. But just the way Mr. Polyev presented the policies of the party, and that we need a new direction. We've had enough of 10 years of the past governments. That it's time for a new move and a new way to govern our country. And I was quite impressed with the way he did it.
Okay. Did he bring up Trump? Did he talk about Trump at all? Tariffs and defending Canada from Trump?
Something about U.S. Being under the thumb of the U.S. kind of thing, but it was very minimal. He was basically talking about how he has to govern, how our country should be governed, and how those that are disadvantaged are going to benefit from his policies, and a very positive attitude. And cheers, it was loud in there.
Yeah, but a lot of people think he's making a mistake by not talking enough about Trump, so.
Well, I think that's part of the Liberal legacy. If they can bring up Trump, they're not talking about Canada. It's Canada that needs governing. Trump is going to do what he's going to do. Mr. Polyev or Mr. Carney are going to have to react based on how that happens, but it's our country that needs the attention. So in my opinion, anyway.
Now, I don't know if you were talking to people in the crowd. I guess what I want to know is this just a gathering of the hardcore conservative base, or are there people in that crowd who are undecided and they're going there because they want to learn more about this guy, Polyev, and what he stands for? Are there undecided voters going to these things? That's the big question.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I never really did talk to too many other people regarding that question. I don't know. That's an interesting point to make. But for me, it was just the energy was there, and I think that's what I could feel. And it just felt like it was a major Stanley Cup hockey game. That's what it felt like.
Right. Yeah. Now, you're not a crowd scientist, right? So
no.
But they're saying 5,000. The party's saying 5,000. The CBC has this big story today. No way. We're talking to crowd scientists, and there's no way the crowds are that big. Like maybe 1,000.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. It was a large warehouse building, but it was shoulder to shoulder, and we stood there for about an hour and a half, and we were there after we got started. So it was, and the traffic around there, it was just crazy. Like, the police were directing traffic, and it was maddening. But like I said, it was. I was quite impressed with the way Mr. Polyev shared his ideas and just the energy in the building. It was quite something.
Okay. All right, Dwayne. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Good to hear from you.
Bye.
Yeah, out to Calgary now. Let's go to Hickey is in Calgary today, calling on the Friday free-for-all. Hi, Hickey.
Hey, I'll be quick. I only got 4 points I want to make.
Okay.
I had a polling company call me about 3 or 4 years ago, and I decided to take the poll. And now it seems like they call me every single day, as well as all the other ones. So I think the thing to remember is, yes, I know we like to think that polling is all, anonymous, and they just, they dial people like the scammer calls do, but I don't think that happens that way. I think that people that answer the polls all the time, and they call back and get those people's opinions. So I think the polls are a little bit skewed by, people that aren't at work and people that have the ability to sit at home, answer the phone in the middle of the day and answer the polls when the polling companies are doing it. That's the first part. The second part is, I think the CBC's, had a very interesting article today, and I'm not sure how good the CBC is at math, because if you remember right, I don't think they were given any of their bonuses to their executives last time we chatted, and they were questioned multiple times. But I've had a couple friends that were at the rallies, and they said the rallies were absolutely off the hook. And then your point about the rallies, I don't think there's a lot of people that go to, an Eminem concert or a Kiss concert if they don't know if they like the music. I think when people are going to the rallies, they're going to the rallies because they want to get fired up and they want to help spread the message about what this person's about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think the polls are going to make more people vote in this election than have ever voted in the history of Canadian politics before.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I think
You think it might be a motivating factor,
surprised.
like we're going to prove those polls wrong, and turnout could, it could really motivate the Conservatives to turn out, the Conservative supporters to turn out.
It's going to motivate the people that have never voted before to drive into the voting stations and to vote, because, it's great that the Liberals say that they're winning, because after, the frustration that people have had for the last 10 years, I think it's going to motivate more people than ever to go to the polls and prove them wrong.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you, Hickey. Great points all around. Interesting points all around. Thank you so much. I do believe what Hickey is saying. People go, they want to get fired up. They want to be motivated. They want to hear them. If you watch a Poilievre rally, like watching a Poilievre rally to me, because I've watched a few of these now, more than a few, it's kind of like going to a concert of a band that you really liked when you were in high school. Like, let's say, like a band like that for me, Fleetwood Mac. Okay. So if I was to go to a Fleetwood Mac concert, do I want to hear Fleetwood Mac play an hour's worth of new tunes? No. What do I want when I go to a Fleetwood Mac concert? Right? I want the greatest hits. Right? I want to hear Gold Dust Woman, and I want to hear Go Your Own Way. I want to hear Secondhand News. I want to hear, Lindsay banging away on that guitar. And Stevie belting out those lyrics, right? It's kind of the same with the Poilievre rally. Like, it's an event. It's an event. The people who are there, they want to axe the tax, build the homes, defund the CBC, put the bad guys in jail, boots, not suits. Like, it's a whole spectacle. But is it growing the movement? Is it growing the voter pool, the accessible voter pool for the Conservatives? That is the big question halfway through this campaign. Ernie is in Kitchener. Hi, Ernie.
Hey, Rob.
Hi, Ernie.
Just a couple of points. My wife and I, I'm 40, but we've gone to, we went to Harper rally in our mid-20s, and we went to Shearer's last rally when it was here in town, and we were there last night, obviously. And she just asked me after, she's like, how was it compared to the last ones we've been to? And I remember going to Harper's rally and Shearer's rally, we're like, man, are young people going to get it? Are we going to get some young people here? Like, don't get me wrong, we enjoyed it, but we are conservative. And I went with my neighbor last night, and he brought his 19-year-old son. And as we're walking, and it was probably, we got there, I think, about 45 minutes before it started. When we parked, it took us almost a half an hour to walk to get in there. And he's like, I can't believe this. He's like, are we going to a football game? Like, this is insanity. And this is his first time experiencing this.
Right.
And seeing the young people, like, at a conservative, this is by far the biggest rally I've ever been to personally, but to see the young people there, that was really, really encouraging to see. And just going out.
And as you say, different from events that have been held by two previous Conservative leaders where it was an older crowd.
Right. And we went out for a bite to eat after, and I just asked him, like, what brought you out here? Like, what do you think? And he's like, Ernie, I can't. Like, do I see myself ever owning a home? And I'm speaking with his dad there, and he's like, it's been this. So my thoughts. This is just my opinion here, and
Yeah.
like I said, he
Yeah.
wasn't just there was a ton of young people. Think about the last 10 years they've gone through, and so if that's what they're experiencing, that's why they're coming out. That's why it's like, man, do I see myself owning a house? I need to see what the other alternative is. I need to have hope. And I believe that's what it's got. Like, that's what it is to the young people. If they've just seen the last 10 years, that's why they're coming out now. And he himself said, I never ever would have thought I would ever attend
How much? Again, I want to ask it on the Trump stuff. I mean, one of the callers said it barely came up. Is that true?
So I was running about and talking to a lot of people. I've watched a lot of Pierre's rally, just like you have. Obviously, I've been on the phone with you a few times. It did come up, but it was more or less of like, we need to deal with this. I'm the stronger leader to do with this. It wasn't. It was more. A lot of it was a lot more focused on how Canada is the way it is today and how I'm going to help your lives.
Right. This idea, Harper made these remarks at the rally in Edmonton. A lot of the issues in Canada have nothing to do with Donald Trump. They have everything to do with the way the country was governed for the last 10 years. So that's kind of part of the pitch, right?
Right. Well, it's a bait and switch.
Right.
It's like, don't focus on the last 10 years.
Okay.
Focus on
right.
That's why the Liberals have their game plan. And I would love for callers that have been to a Carney rally to call in. I want to hear from their experience. You're hearing this. I'm surprised Brandon, the young guy, didn't crowd surf. He was that age. He could have done that there. And just, I would like to hear some different sides to see and hear too. But that was just my experience and just my observation of the young people crowd.
Very good. Okay. Again, we have some audio. This is Polyev at a news event today in St. Catharines, Ontario. And he was asked about, remarks from high profile people in the movement, in the conservative movement. I mean, Corey Teneycke is a power player in the conservative movement, and he is really lambasting the way this campaign has been managed, that it's going down in flames, and that Polyev has to focus a lot more on Trump. And this is what Polyev said.
No, I answered that question 2 weeks ago. Liberals and lobbyists want me to stop talking about high food prices. Well, I'm not going to do that, because single mothers shouldn't be going to bed hungry, worried about how they're going to feed their kids in the morning. They want me to stop talking about the doubling housing costs during the lost Liberal decade. I'm not going to stop talking about that. They want me to stop talking about the rampaging crime that's overtaking our streets and the overdose crisis Liberals caused that has taken the lives of 50,000 people. I will not stop talking about that either. After the lost Liberal decade of rising costs and crime and a falling economy under America's thumb, we can't afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a change with a new Conservative government that will axe taxes, build homes, unleash our resources, lock up criminals, and bring home a safe, affordable country for our people. Thank you.
And you know what? Maybe before Trump, that's the winning message. But for some people who are dyed-in-the-wool conservatives, they say that's not the message for the moment. And there is a sense of inevitability and even dread now at the halfway mark of this campaign that the sun has set on the idea of a conservative majority government and that they blew it. And if you have some thoughts on that, I'd love to hear from you. Want to go to Calgary and speak with Derek today on the Friday Free for All Talkback. Hi, Derek.
Hi, Rob. How are you today?
I'm good, Derek. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
I'm a first-time caller, but I listen all the time.
Appreciate that, sir.
Yeah. And the political wranglings that are going on right now, as far as I'm concerned, from our two leaders, even in their rallies, they're making all kinds of promises, but they actually haven't come out with a policy statement with timelines on when stuff is going to happen. And we're headed into a two-party system the way this is looking from our polls.
Well, it's certainly a two-party race. I mean, this is they say, I've heard it described this way. It's been presidentialized. It's been presidentialized. Yeah. You basically have two people running for president. Only
right. They both want a majority government, and they can't come out with a policy statement that says what they're going to do in the next 4 years. I don't want promises.
Okay. Well, every day they're making announcements. Every day they're making announcements, sir. What are you talking about? Every day they're making announcements.
But are they actually policy statements from the parties, or are these just announcements and promises for a leadership campaign or a prime minister's?
Well, it's part of an election platform, right? It's part of an election platform.
But is it a platform from the Conservative Party, or is it just the rhetoric that's being
I think
used?
these are pretty well thought out by both sides. These are pretty well thought out policies. Day by day, this is what we want to focus on this day. Yesterday it was gun control for Mark Carney. Today it was building big infrastructure projects, fast tracking big infrastructure projects for Pierre Poilievre. Every day there's an announcement like this, sir.
Yeah, the infrastructure projects and the pipeline corridors or energy corridors that they're talking about, they're not giving any kind of timelines. Like they're not saying
under Mr. Carney, Mr. Carney said that he would set up this office in Ottawa, and its only job would be to look at ways to fast track energy corridors with a time frame to get things approved in 2 years. 2 years.
This from the same person. Our pipelines before by environmental bullshit.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's it, Derek. Can't say that, my friend. Gotta end our conversation there. A couple of minutes here for Peter and Langley. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Peter. Only 2 minutes here today.
Earlier this week, I phoned and I was mentioning that I was stuck between who I was going to vote for, and I've made up my mind. And I'm going to vote Conservative.
Okay.
Hello?
Why is that?
You're there. Okay. Yeah. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't believe that Carney is going to redefine the relationship between the USA and Canada any more than Poilievre will. And if that's the case, then I'm going to go for the economy. And I think Poilievre is going to be better for the economy than Carney.
Really? Better than the Goldman Sachs alum? Better than the governor of 2 central banks? How did you draw that conclusion?
Well, I think Poilievre is going to be better at unleashing what someone else called the animal spirit of Canadians. I think that Poilievre, he's going to get the government out of the way and let Canadian entrepreneurship take hold. And the liberal traditional way is the government leads the way kind of thing, and they tend to suppress Canadian entrepreneurship. So I think Poilievre is going to be better for the economy.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Peter. That's our time for today, but thank you for calling for the Friday Free-for-All. Plenty of time to fit you in, but we will stop here for now because the latest breaking news is coming up next. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Robert in Calgary is up next on the Friday Free-for-All. Hello, Robert.
Good day, Rob.
Hey.
Hey, Rob, you've really covered everything in super depth on absolutely every single topic around this election. So, well done. And,
we're only halfway. We're only halfway there yet.
Yeah, but honestly,
long way to go. Yeah,
you probably have never had so many people show their passion and being so engaged because, I mean, your show is very popular and it's
I
great.
appreciate that, Robert.
I got a couple quick points.
Sure.
So Carney's the face of the Liberals, but every single Liberal that's been there for a decade is still there. They're sitting in the background.
Yeah.
And we lost a decade. And people know this in Canada, and they're extremely, extremely aware of it. So we need change. And Poilievre's right on track. He hasn't blown it, and I don't believe that Scott, who ran Ford's campaign, at all. He did not blow it. He's right on message, and people are liking it. So the most important thing is every Conservative person has got to get out and vote this year. Everyone.
Well,
there can't be.
You need voter turnout to be higher than it's been. That's for sure, right?
Yeah.
But there's this tug of war. If I could just interrupt, there's this tug of war right now between the forces for change, okay? Because there's a compelling case, and you've just outlined it. There's a compelling case to be made. It's time for a change. They've had 3 terms. Do you really want a 4th term? Look at the last 9 years. I see that. But there's also the current reality. There's also the current reality, which is people are worried, especially older people are worried. They're worried about Trump. They're worried about tariffs. They're worried about this news out of the Ingersoll, Ontario, where there's a giant General Motors assembly plant there, and people are going to be out of a job until October by the sounds of things. It sounds to me like it more has to do with retooling than tariffs, but we'll see how that plays in the media. They're worried about Trump. They're worried about tariffs. They don't like to see the stock market down 1,000 points in one day, and they look at Mark Carney, and they see a guy who can provide stability, who's been there through crises before, financial crisis, Brexit, whatever the case might be. And whatever his record, he's been there and he has the experience, and they want somebody with a steady hand. And there's a real tug of war happening right now. Right. And right now, Carney seems to be winning that.
Well, honestly, Canada could be strong. We could have been strong, but we lost 10 years. I mean, we lost 10 years of production. We lost 10 years of investment in this country because they put up so many roadblocks, you couldn't build anything. So now they're saying, well, we should have done that. Well, duh. Yeah, you should have done that. And that's what we need to do. Canada's strong. We got all the resources. Let's get to work. We don't have to worry about them down south. We got to make us strong and independent. I think Canada is super strong, super independent, and we got to get moving on it. We can't lose any more time by blocking pipelines, by blocking our infrastructure, by blocking our natural resources. We can't do it. So,
okay. And thank you for your call. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Robert. The phone lines are jammed again, so I'm going to move along. Yeah. I hear your case. Thank you, Omar, calling from the nation's capital today, Ottawa. Hi there, Omar.
Hey, Rob. Hey, how you doing? So, full disclosure, I was in the camp that was poised to vote for the Conservatives before Carney came into the Liberals, and I'm on the Carney camp because I'm just I'm impressed by his resume. And another thing, it's about likability. Pierre is not a likable guy. He comes off very abrasive. Okay. You get the used car salesman. Honestly, I was going to vote for the Conservatives, but Carney, he's way more center than Trudeau was. Trudeau was a joke, right? I can admit that. Carney kind of evokes Jean Chrétien, more center, more like you said, more calm, more stable, and more kind
of a blue liberal, if you will. He's like what we used to call a blue liberal, a business-minded liberal.
Absolutely. And honestly, even if Chrystia Freeland had won, or Christina Gould, or any of those, I would still be voting for the Conservatives. But he's bringing back kind of like the old, and no matter what it is, the leader is in charge of the party. So it doesn't matter who the cabinet ministers are. The leader sets the tone, right? And Pierre, honestly, the Conservatives, if they had chosen someone more, say like Peter MacKay or even like Aaron O'Toole, I feel bad for the guy last election, but they need someone who's not as attack doggish as Poilievre. That's my take on it. So,
okay, that's your take. Fair enough. I mean, there was a time. I mean, you can't believe the Liberals must wake up and can't believe their good fortune. Don't forget, I mean, there was a time just 3 or 4 months ago when it seemed as though the country was ready to elect Pierre Poilievre. Could still happen yet. 2.5 weeks to go. Only halfway there. A week is a lifetime in politics. So one way to look at it is, a little more than 2 lifetimes left. Who knows what we could be talking about next week? Well, I have a good idea. Leaders' debates.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Back to Cambridge, Ontario on the Friday Free-for-All, and welcome Jeff to our program. Hello, Jeff.
How are you?
I'm good, Jeff. What do you want to talk about, Jeff?
Poilievre.
I
got to know him back a few years ago.
maybe 2019, 2020.
Right.
And I know this is going to sound silly, but at the time he was wearing glasses.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's kind of like he wanted to be a new man. And I think that was that was his
makeover
downfall. I'm not
his
saying
makeover was his downfall.
Well, I shouldn't say downfall, but I think it's odd that he would change his looks. It's too late now for him to put back the glasses. But I liked him. It's kind of like the reverse of Superman. You know, he changes. Right. I know it sounds silly, but it's just my thought. And,
sure.
And the Prime
Minister. So when you met
right
him,
now,
but if I could ask you, when you met him, I mean, what
I didn't
were your
meet him. Sorry, if I said meet, I didn't meet him.
Oh, you didn't meet him. Okay.
No,
okay.
no.
But you
I'm
say
sorry.
you got
what
to
I
know
meant
him.
Was, I saw him on TV.
Right. Okay.
When he did a speech, and I liked him.
You liked him.
He
okay.
spoke well, but I didn't meet him. No.
Sure. Fine. What do you think of him now?
I haven't really heard too much. I know the Liberals always go first in news reporting, and then it's kind of like you don't really hear too much. I don't, anyways. But I'm limited to what I can listen to.
I appreciate that, but you do think when you listen to the news, what you can listen to, you think there's more coverage of the Liberals than the Conservatives. Is that right?
Yeah, Conservatives.
Okay.
What I think about the Prime Minister right now is when the Trudeau was in, I used to say the banks were Trudeau's employer, and Trudeau listened to what the banks would tell him. In fact, I'd go so far as the banks brought him in and groomed him for that job of Prime Minister in order to do certain things. So now I say the Prime Minister right now is the middleman, or he was the middleman to Trudeau. Now he will, hopefully not, but he could be the head man. And he's a bank man, which is right up there with the drug companies. They're despicable. They have no morals. They will take everything that you've got and more if they can.
So you don't like the fact that he comes from the world of high finance?
No. If you want to see a good show, Michael Moore he brought this out in 2009.
Right.
And it's crap. Now I forget what it was.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, you had me at Michael Moore, sir. That's enough said right there. Okay, Jeff. Thank you. Fair enough. Jonathan in Calgary. Hi, Jonathan. Good to hear from you again, Jonathan. Hello, Jonathan. Are you with me?
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's Timothy, not Jonathan. But hey,
Timothy. Okay, nice Timothy. Name. Sorry about that. My fault. Yeah, go ahead.
That's fine. So I did call a couple days ago, and it was so interesting on the day I called that it was right after you had mentioned that Donald Trump he tweeted something on Truth Social at 10 a.m. and he said, go buy. And all of a sudden at 1 p.m., the Treasury Secretary comes on and the stock market rebounded.
Yes.
Donald Trump has pushed the limit of what's humanly hard to explain. There's no lines. I mean, I love the guy, don't get me wrong, but I just...
You love the guy? Really? Okay.
Well, I used to. I guess I still kind of do, honestly.
Okay.
I just don't like...
Right.
I'm not one of those blind followers. There are some people that follow him before whom he can do no wrong. I'm not one of those people. So I'm just surprised that if anybody else did what he's doing, they would be in so much trouble. But hey, he's able to get away with so much. And then on the Canadian, so that was my first comment. Now, my second quick comment, and thank you for fitting me in on this busy Friday. My second comment is that if Mark Carney was in the Conservative Party, it would be an easy win. Because he had a likable personality and he has some resume. So
plus,
right
if
now,
I could,
still,
Timothy, he seems to have a fondness for conservative policies.
Well, I am conservative,
Right.
even though I'm
Yeah.
leaning. My values are conservative. I believe in the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
This time, I'm leaning towards McCartney, even though I'm
You are?
not a big fan of the Liberal Party. But I am
Okay.
because of the guy at the top. Yeah,
Right.
I really like McCartney. His resume is impressive. We've seen what he has done with two economies at the bank of during Brexit. So yeah, that was just my 2 cents. But I guess there are many people like me who are quite undecided at the moment, is what I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Great to hear from you, Timothy. Glad we could fit you in today. Yeah, good call as always. I'm Rob Stowe. We'll stop here and share some closing thoughts as we reach the midway point of this election campaign.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Well, it's been quite a few weeks, hasn't it, in Canadian politics, with the big question being what has happened to the Conservative campaign? Where do things stand? And have they blown it? This 25-point lead. They stand accused of campaign malpractice. Hard to say right now. Some say yes, the thing is over. Stick a fork in the Conservatives halfway through the race. Others are saying, not so fast. It's only halfway through the race. But it is hard to escape the fact that the last 12 polls all had the Liberals in the lead. And it's just a matter of how wide is the lead. Some of the polls were saying the race was narrowing. The polls are not saying that now, that it's only getting better for the Liberals. And it is also hard to escape the geography. If the Liberal lead is what the polls say it is, in places like Atlantic Canada, Quebec, Ontario, it's going to be very, very difficult for the Conservatives in the election. Them's just the facts. Everybody knows the Conservatives, to have any chance, have to do well in Ontario. There is no escaping it. They have to try and win everywhere. Doug Ford just won in the Ontario election, and he just won a landslide, his third in a row. And he won it by barely mentioning things that normal people talk about during a provincial election campaign: healthcare, education. Doug Ford was 100% of the time Trump, 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 going on American TV, doing every interview there was to do. Hey, it worked for Doug Ford. That is the accusation from this top person in Ford's camp, Corey Tonight. Now, I've met Corey Tonight over the years because he is a very influential person in the conservative movement. I've interviewed him. We've talked about Sun News. He's a Saskatchewan guy, born of the West, conservative protest politics of the Reform Party, worked his way up into the Harper PMO, and went on to run 3 very successful election campaigns for Doug Ford. And he's not a liberal. He's not a liberal. And I mean, he's thoroughly disgusted with this conservative election campaign. Campaign malpractice. Thinks it's all been too Trumpy. He says even the rallies are kind of Trumpy. They give off a Trump vibe. The way things are right now, whether conservatives want to admit it or not, giving off a Trump vibe could be a recipe for losing. Because anything that looks or sounds remotely Trumpian is toxic. And there's too much of it, according to Tonight. That's what he's saying. There's too much of it seeping into the campaign. Now, Polyev was in St. Catharines this morning, another place where they'd love to win. They've won there before. And he just dismisses this advice and insists that he won't stop talking about all the other stuff. What he keeps calling the lost liberal decade. He's not going to stop talking about sky-high housing prices and food prices and Canadians who are struggling to pay for the basics, an immigration system that has run amok, crime in the streets, public disorder, public safety, stalled energy projects. He still wants to prosecute the liberal record of the last 10 years. And there are also polls that say there is hay to be made there. especially with younger voters, and among younger voters, especially with young men, who feel the last 10 years has left them incredibly disadvantaged. The Conservative campaign thinks it can also win on the ground, with the ground game, with the so-called GOTV, get out the vote. But it's a gamble. It is a big gamble. But it seems like the Poilievre team is willing to roll the dice on it. And there are debates next week. But even there's reason to be cautious. I've said this before. The debates might not change anything. The last thing the Conservatives want to do is overhype the debates. That's the worst mistake the Conservatives could make, would be to make too much of Poilievre's debating skills and say that he's going to wipe the floor with Mark Carney. They made that mistake in 2015. The last thing the Conservatives want to do is portray Pierre Poilievre to be Mike Tyson and Mark Carney is some kind of debating Buster Douglas. Because people of a certain vintage will remember how that all turned out. I'm Rob Snow. That's it for us this week. We'll be back on Monday. The latest breaking news is coming up next. This is News Radio.